Charlie, you know as well as I do, because your team's on a historic run that we haven't seen out of this program for about 20 years plus, that every time you beat someone, I'm sure all the haters and detractors and critics say, well, they were no good. They were no good. They were no good. Even though Kentucky's only giving up like 20 points against Ole Miss and like 17 points against Mississippi State and on and on and on. They're playing respectable football against quality teams elsewhere. And then this happens 44-6. That rhetoric will have to stop. There is no way that after this game, anybody can say, well, they were no good.
The fact that even after that Alabama game, they scored 52 points on Nick Saban's Alabama team with Bryce Young playing, and they beat them. And still there were people going, well, this isn't a normal Nick Saban team. And they, what? What are you talking about? It's Nick Saban, Alabama. It's the greatest coach of all time. And they lined up and they beat those boys. And I said it in our post-game show after this Kentucky game. After the Alabama win, it felt unreal. It felt surreal, dreamlike. How is this happening? This win over Kentucky, in the week leading up, even from me, there was so much talk about like, Kentucky can give them a game. Kentucky can give them a game. Watch out. We gotta make sure Kentucky wasn't going to give them a game. This team's too good. And it became real. That's the way that I've put it. This is the game where Tennessee went from, oh, isn't this a fun story, to like Tennessee is playing with men now and not boys. They took that step up where they went, we're not competing with Kentucky anymore. Missouri, South Carolina. I mean, those, you still have to win those games and take care of business, everything. But stop. Just stop it. They're competing with Georgia. They're competing with Alabama, and this is a national championship contender at this point. And that's where I think this Kentucky game took it over the top. Where, I mean, if you watch that game, they won in every single phase throughout the entire game, and just the whole thing, they just blew it up right in Kentucky's face. And I don't know what else you say at this point. And I even think I've been trying to listen to as much analysis as I can about the playoff rankings that are going to come out tonight. I think Tennessee may be number one with that resume. And at what point they're number one? Yeah, you get a chance to prove yourself this weekend. But even if they lose to Georgia, come correct and give respect to this team for what they've done, because the only loss they will have will be to the best team in America. So, come on. Something's got to give there.
I've got him number one, if that makes you feel good, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, it
I
does.
think it's the best resume.
It does, because I think a lot of Tennessee fans I've heard are kind of dismissing, oh, the rankings don't matter, the rankings don't matter. Sure, to some extent, but I actually think they do, because I think it's going to be indicative of how the playoff committee is going to treat you. Because I think there's a scenario here where no matter what happens this weekend, Tennessee makes it into the playoff. They can lose and make it in.
Yep.
And it could be Georgia wins, Georgia goes to the SEC championship and wins, and then that eliminates Alabama and Tennessee gets in. Or Georgia wins, goes to the SEC championship, beats Alabama or LSU or whoever it may be. Loses, that SEC West team wins, and Tennessee still gets in at that point because they beat Alabama. I mean, they have the best win in America. I guess in some sense you would say with a win over Alabama and a loss to Georgia, they would have the best win and the best loss in America. You would have to play Georgia close. You would have to make sure, 3.7-point loss, something like that. But I do think those rankings matter, because if you're number one right now, your chances going forward, if you, God forbid, you lose this game, your chances going forward are better. So I actually do think it matters. And I'm as cynical as they come about the college football playoff. It's something that I think has become kind of specifically with that rankings show, they make it up as this giant thing, and oh my gosh. And ultimately, like, outside of those four teams, it just really doesn't matter much. But Tennessee's one of those four teams. They are. So, take it at what it is, because it does to some extent matter, actually.
Charlie, you went in the same direction I was going in regards to, it is kind of an unusual position to be in, that You're an undefeated team, most likely number one. And if you win, you have knocked off a team that has as much respect as anybody in the country. And you've already knocked off the other team that has as much respect as anybody in the country. Therefore, you go to the SEC championship game, albeit we'll take away any possibility of upsets. There always that chance with South Carolina in particular there. But barring any unforeseen upsets, yes, you're in an SEC championship game as the number one seed. Even if you lose that game, you have a one-loss team. But if you lose this game and lose it respectively, 31-27, you've protected yourself from a second loss by not going to the SEC championship game and just sitting there 11-1. We beat Alabama. We played Georgia closer than anyone.
Yeah, because, I mean, what are they going to say? Oh, Oregon gets in over you? Well, Oregon lost to Georgia by 40 or more, whatever it was, 45-3 or something.
46.
Yeah, I mean, what are they going to say at that point? TCU has a better resume? TCU? What win on their resume would get them over the top? And they're going to have to win the Big 12 championship. It just feels like to me they're going to lose one along the way. I mean, they came very close to West Virginia this weekend even. West Virginia is not good. So, whatever. But Clemson too, please, dear God, somebody knock Clemson out. Nobody wants to see those guys back. But bottom line of all of that conversation being Tennessee has a good chance no matter what happens this weekend to still make it in. I think the interesting one here is really Georgia, because it almost feels like this is an total elimination game for them. I think they could still make the playoff, but it would require Tennessee to win the SEC championship game or lose one of the snoozers that they have left, one of Missouri, South Carolina, Vandy. And I think the chance of that happening is extremely low. And the chance of Tennessee losing in the SEC championship game the chance of Tennessee beating Alabama a second time, I think, is at best 50-50, because it's so hard to beat anybody twice in a season. I mean, look at Alabama last year with Georgia. They smashed Georgia in the SEC championship game and then get handed the loss in the national championship. It's just hard to beat somebody twice. And so Georgia doesn't have those signature wins. And if they lose to Tennessee here, I think that's pretty much it for them. I'm not going to completely sail them down the river. Weird things happen every year in college football, but the onus is on them. It really feels like, to me, Tennessee still has a shot with a loss. I'm not sure Georgia does, just from what I've looked at. I don't know if you push back against that. They might still, but that's just my feeling.
Well, Georgia has the win against Oregon. And if Oregon can continue to make them look good by going through the Pac-12 as a champion with only one loss, that's going to be their signature win.
But would they, at the end of the day, if Tennessee loses to Alabama in the SEC championship game in that scenario, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee have one loss. I mean, you just look at that resume, it's still Tennessee, I think, right? I mean, Georgia's one win is over Oregon, but they lost head-to-head to Tennessee. So Tennessee, right, they get that bump over Georgia. Georgia's not going to hop Tennessee. Alabama won the SEC championship game.
Absolutely. So unless there is just a complete chaos elsewhere with a bunch of two-loss champions and the other conferences knock themselves out and there's 3 SEC teams, yes, that's the pecking order, because Tennessee and Alabama have the split in the series between the two, and
Exactly.
Georgia's been left out with only one opportunity, and they blew it and they lost.
It could get funky if Alabama loses to LSU this weekend, or at Ole Miss. That could make things interesting, where all of those teams have 2 losses.
Yes. And then Alabama wins the SEC championship.
And then Alabama wins the SEC championship. That would be the weirdest scenario. But like I said, you never know. In college football, weird stuff happens all the time. But it does, at least as of right now, it feels like this may be an elimination game for Georgia, and I think they have to play that way. I think they have to come with that in mind. Like, this is the game that will knock us out of national championship contention this season, if we don't win. And so, good luck to them. I think Tennessee can win this game. So, best of luck.
Charlie Burris is here talking up the Vols. catch him on Big Orange Podcast there on A to Z Sports, and you see Charlie Burris's Twitter handle right there.